And let me just say, first of all, that I understand that I'm asking people to radically rethink the way that we have been taught and educated to see the world. Not only am I asking you to do that, I have in some ways asked myself to do that. And I can tell you that in this last month, in some ways, I've learned more about medicine than I can remember in a long time. And again, even though I've been questioning these things at least since the early 1980s, it's a process for all of us. We are just re-educating ourselves on how we see the world. And all I can say is it seems clear to me that the way we see the world right now isn't exactly working out for the best. So finally, I'm very frustrated because you don't seem to get it. And I say, yes, but I'm going to show you 5 experts who are tenured professors at prestigious universities. And all of them are students and studying the effect of ping pong ball allergy on knocking down brick walls. And they all say this is a very interesting new invention and they need more study. And so they need a $500 million grant to study how exactly the mechanism and the effect of this ping pong ball would be on knocking down walls. And I think at that point, you would be so frustrated and you would say, Tom, all I care about, show me a video or show me in person somebody throwing the ping pong ball at a wall and the wall knocking down. And if you can't do that, I'm not interested. And in a nutshell, that's all I'm saying here. Show me a purified virus that causes disease. And as far as everybody knows, that has simply not been done. And in most realms of life, that's the only thing we would accept as any kind of credible evidence. Now, let's get into this even a little bit further here, because we can even expand this whole theory of do viruses cause disease and even expand it to bacteria. In other words, do germs cause disease? And just to be clear here, when I speak of germs, I'm not speaking of worms or parasites. I'm speaking only of viruses and bacteria. So again, let me give you an example to help you conceptualize this so you can really think this through. So imagine this scenario. You have some milk from a cow, and people drink the milk and then they get sick with diarrhea. And everybody wants to know why this happened. So you do a microscopic examination of the milk and you find a bacteria called Listeria in the milk. And you know that there is at least reports that an infection, drinking Listeria bacteria causes diarrhea in humans. So it's a very clear situation. The milk has Listeria in it. The person drinks the milk with Listeria. They get diarrhea. That's the end of the story. You think you've essentially proven the bacteria causes the disease. However, I think all of us would agree that there actually is a different way of looking at this. And the different way is maybe, which actually was the case most often with cows with Listeria, is that somehow you've improperly fed the cow. They used to do it with swilt. They sometimes feed cows cardboard or grains or other things that are inappropriate for the cow. Sometimes you could even poison the cow with DDT or other toxins or worming medicine. And now you end up with toxins in the milk because after all, we know that all toxins in our bodies, we know this from breast milk studies, always end up in the milk. So an alternative explanation is the Listeria are there in the milk in order to biodegrade the toxins. In other words, that is actually the function of bacteria in nature. For example, if you put stuff into your compost pile that doesn't belong there, then you'll get funky bacteria to biodegrade what you shouldn't have put in your compost. And nobody in their right mind would say your compost pile has an infection. That's very clear. The bacteria, as they always do in nature, they biodegrade that which is dead or diseased. Another example, if you poison your pond, eventually you will often get things like algae growth. Again, nobody would say that the algae is an infection. The algae isn't good for you, and the algae actually may have toxins in it itself, but the algae fundamentally, because this is the way that nature works, is biodegrading the toxins. Now, it is true that the fact of growing algae may cause other troubles, but still, I think every rational person would say the source of this problem is the poisoning of the pond or the poisoning of the cow. Now, so those are two different, equally as plausible ways of looking at it. One is the cow was perfectly fine and it happened to grow listeria, and the other is the cow was poisoned and the listeria are nature's way of biodegrading the poisons. So the question is, how can we distinguish between these two? And if you think about that for a minute, and usually I would ask people, just think about that for a minute. How would you distinguish between those two? And the answer is actually very clear. The only way, and this is why I started out with the ping pong example, the only way, and I cannot emphasize this enough, the only way that any rational person would be convinced would be if you take the milk and you purify the listeria. In other words, you isolate the listeria from the milk so that you're sure that the only thing you have is listeria, not anything else from the milk, because it may be the toxins in the milk that are causing the diarrhea. Now, and then you would take this purified listeria, you would give only that to another person and see if they got sick. Now, I would only point out there is even a problem with that potentially, because it could be that the listeria are essentially eating or biodegrading the poisons and they may themselves be poisoned. But let's not worry about that for a minute, because I will grant you that if you could introduce a pure culture of listeria and make somebody sick,